I was kind of behind on like getting stuff on Anchor and that. So I did like, I think 3 episodes to Anchor this week and 2 to YouTube. So I don't remember which is, you know what I mean? They get kind of blurry anyway. Like people will be like, oh, I watched this week's and da-da-da. And I'm like,
and you're like, which one was this week?
I don't remember saying that, but cool. That's awesome. Sounds
I know.
good.
And Matt was asking me last night, he's like, what number is this? Is this 12? And I was like, Hello, everyone, and welcome to Middleish, the podcast about moderation in all things. I am Erin Green.
And I am Michael Gray. How's it going?
And I'm great. We just figured out. Are we going to talk over each other all day?
I think this whole podcast should just be this. Just talking over each other.
Every time someone tries. I was just going to point out that we just figured out that this is lucky number 13 episode.
Mm-hmm. Episode 13, which is really cool. Yeah. Like I was really excited when we got into double digits. That felt like, okay, this is like a for real thing. So, you know, like, I mean, 10 weeks into something, that's significant. And just like 13, it's pretty rad. Pretty excited.
Yeah, it's a milestone.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, yeah.
I love that we've been so consistent about it. And Matt has told me several times that he's impressed with our consistency. Like if we have a scheduling hiccup or something and then we need to move a recording, he's like, oh, so you guys are still on track then? You guys still have enough? And I was like, yeah, and we have a couple in the bank. So if we need to, if anything happens, and I don't know if I told you this, but one time, I don't know, after like maybe the 3rd or 4th episode, we were talking over dinner and he just goes, I'm really impressed with how you guys have just hit the ground running with this. And
nice.
You know what's the coolest part though? Is how little help you've needed from me. I was like,
he's so happy to not be involved.
For those listeners who don't know, my husband is a videographer and photographer and probably one of the most avid YouTubers that I know in terms of like watching. And he's always like learning about the latest tech and like audio and video and all this stuff. And so when we started this podcasting endeavor, I don't know, nearly as much as Matt does. And so I think he was a little bit worried because I was asking him questions and he was like, oh shit, I'm going to have to do all this work.
I'm impressed with how little we've needed his help, to be honest. Like I was like prematurely feeling bad. Like when we first started talking about this, and he was doing so much legwork as far as like, here's some camera options and lighting options and all that. I was already feeling bad for how much we were going to need him. Like I was like ready for I'm really sorry, man. Thank you so much. Like I was just ready to do that. And it's gone pretty well. Yeah. I'm surprised at how well we've got this thrown together with both of us, like not really knowing what we're doing.
You're doing the editing and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm doing a few little like housekeeping things, I think, and like
keep
making
us on schedule.
Spreadsheets, calendars of content, whatever.
Otherwise, I'd be like, what are we talking about? What are we doing?
Come on, you're still like that. You do that anyway.
It would be worse. It would be worse. You don't want to experience that.
So number 13. This is a good place to be. Thanks for listening, you guys.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
We do. So things are going well. You're good? You want to jump right in? You got anything to share?
Yeah. Not really. Just kind of doing, I want to say I'm like, life isn't like boring or anything. I'm doing some cool stuff in terms of, I've got a couple projects I'm working on professionally that, I'm hoping if all goes to plan, this could be a really fulfilling kind of journey for me in terms of I'm very passionate about helping the next generation of up and coming athletes. So adolescent females specifically, just because of the, different pressures that
Right.
young women have, and especially through that adolescent and pre-adolescent stage, some of the implications with nutrition and, self-esteem and confidence. And so I attended this virtual clinic. It was supposed to be live, of course, but, it
Sure.
was virtual. And they did a great job. It was through Wildwood Running out of Portland. And these two women basically put on this workshop that was just, it really surpassed my expectations. We talked, psychology and food relationship. We talked injury prevention, like from a strength and conditioning standpoint for young athletes
Nice.
and the kinds of things they need to focus on. We talked to different coaches and the different, you know, uh, aspects of working with young athletes. Anyway, to make a long story short, I've got a fire lit under my hiney now to get working on some of this stuff that I really want to do
Awesome.
for young athletes. And I have an opportunity to work with with the Challenged Athletes Foundation here in Idaho, has some athletes that are going to do this cycling event called the Smoke and Fire 400.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a 400-mile, some could call it a race, but most people just doing this because it's like,
Because it's
multiple
400
days.
miles.
It's 400 miles on a bike, and you're bike packing. So
Oh.
you can choose, it goes through some towns, and so you can choose to stay in a hotel
Mm-hmm.
or whatever along the way. But anyway, there's a relay team of people that are, there's one guy in a hand cycle. There's a couple that are like, amputees or whatever, somehow affiliated with Challenged Athletes. And so they've asked me to do a nutrition seminar for this team, going into the Smoke and Fire.
Awesome.
And I have a funny story from this weekend. Matt and a friend of mine did this long 100-mile gravel ride.
Mm-hmm.
And before y'all accuse me of not being Middleish, we took it like super like chill. We even stopped for lunch. And this is my funny story. I've done so many long rides where my fueling was like calculated down to the 15-minute increments that I would eat and the number of ounces I would drink and whatever. So very fine-tuned.
Yeah.
And this was such a casual like adventure ride that I was like, oh, we'll stop for lunch. There's this place like out in the boonies in Idaho that you can like stop and have some lunch. And we all had like chicken strips and fries. And we still had like 3.5 hours to ride. Let me just say, I will not be advocating for that fueling option.
Did you not feel properly fueled?
I did not feel great. Believe it or not, fried, breaded, protein and carbs just did not sit well in my stomach. So anyway, even the experts make mistakes, people.
So what? That's keeping it middle. It's just extreme ride, right? But then
But then I can still
put them
mess up
together, and it's it's right in the middle.
Exactly. So yeah, that's my update. We can make fun of me more, but
That's fine. I'm good with that.
I know.
Yeah. Well, I'm good. If you were going to ask, I'm doing great.
I was going to ask.
So thank you for letting me ask. No, nothing here. We're still
Nothing new.
No, we're still waiting to get all that stuff patched
house
up, holes
fixed.
in our ceiling and roof and stuff. Yeah, it's hopefully by the end of next week it'll be done. That's our hope. So it's not that huge of a deal. We have a couple holes in our ceiling in the bathroom, but it's fine.
It's more the noise and just the wishing it was just done, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then because it's so humid and the leak was in the attic, like sometimes in the kitchen, you get that humidity from the attic that comes down,
Ooh.
So you'll be like standing there and be like, it's so hot and humid all of a sudden, just kind of comes straight down the wall. But
that's Casper that lives in the attic.
That's probably
what that is.
That's probably what that is. Because ghosts are hot.
Friendly ghosts.
Friendly ghosts, but they run hot.
Aren't they supposed to be cold?
I don't know.
Like
probably.
Oh, I have one more thing to share with you.
Okay.
And our viewers. And if you're not a viewer,
A
I'll
listener.
describe.
Oh, that's
This
cool.
is this is a coloring book of cats.
That's pretty
It's a
cool.
little psychedelic looking, right?
It is. It looks pretty
But
fun.
look, stay positive. Isn't that cute? So
I
I've
almost
got
spit my coffee. Just
so
about lost it. I'm a sucker for a
this
good pun. I'll be honest. I like a good pun. That almost got me. I was like, "Ooh."
so yeah, so for those of you who are not viewing this and you're listening, it's just this coloring book all about cats. And I found it in the grocery store yesterday, and it was one of those, like, my inner 5-year-old was like, oh, can we get this? Can we get this? Just throw it in the cart. Just
Please,
get
please, please,
it.
please, 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 please.
Mhm.
I won't ask for
And
anything else. For ever. Yeah.
I've gotten so many questions about my crayons in the background here that and I'm kind of running out of my one of my goals was to find a coloring book, with like bicycles and I don't know, things that
Mhm.
interest me. And I just haven't made the effort to look for it. And hey, this one just found me. So
Nice.
yeah, I'll be
Now,
doing some coloring.
do you put any of your colorings up on the fridge when you're done?
I do.
Do you? I love it.
I actually do.
I love it.
So I told you I've been coloring the Des Linden
Mhm.
coloring pages that she's put together, um, and Des Linden is a just super accomplished runner, and an amazing advocate for women in sport, and I just love her work. And so these coloring pages are just fun kind of reminders of me, and a little bit inspirational because they'll
Sure.
have like little messages and stuff.
Mhm.
And I just finished one last week that I was like, yeah, this one's going on the fridge.
Heck yeah. I mean, those adult coloring books are so like they're intense. Like there's a lot going on. It's a lot of work to do
Hmm.
them. It's not like just Mickey Mouse or whatever like kids have. It's an
Yeah,
investment to finish one of those.
I know. So we'll see how this goes. And I think it kind of leans into our topic today,
Segue away,
the
Aaron.
coloring. Let's
Segue
segue into this
away. Do it.
baby.
This baby.
We're talking about
This
mindfulness.
baby.
Oh gosh, Michael, are you like slap happy?
Usually.
So mindfulness, people.
Mindfulness people.
We're gonna well, God, everything I say is a punchline for Michael today. I
Okay.
guess we figure out.
All right. All right. Here we go. I'm good now. Time to be professional. Michael, come on. You can do it.
So the topic of mindfulness, it's so broad. And when we put this on our calendar to talk about, we were a little bit like, well, should we kind of break this down into the other, maybe more specific topics to talk about each in different episodes? But I think we can hit all of the or several of the different aspects of mindfulness, at least from our perspectives and how
Right.
we talk to clients about it. And then if there's interest, if because we do get feedback sometimes where people are like, hey, I would love for you to delve more into this. So if there's interest, if we hit on something that you're like, wow, will you go deeper into that? And can we have a whole episode on it? Then let us know.
Absolutely.
We'll do it.
Absolutely. So I think we'll kind of hit the, like you said, the ones that we kind of see are most often kind of problematic for people. But I think kind of the cool thing about mindfulness is that a lot of the concepts for like being mindful in a relationship is a concept that kind of plays out in how we mindfully eat,
Yeah.
and so there's kind of like, I think, an overarching umbrella of mindfulness that being mindful in specific situations or whatever certain circumstances, they kind of all have some things in common. So even if we don't address something specifically, that maybe, if you're watching or listening that you would like addressed, there might be some stuff that you can pull out of just that general mindfulness kind of thing you can apply to your situation. But at the same time, yeah, we'd love to hear, other thoughts, and if there's things we can expand on, for sure.
Yeah. So just looking, I'm actually looking at the definition from Oxford, I think, the definition of
Oxford.
mindfulness. I know if I had my British accent, I would read it that way.
Do you have a monocle?
No, I don't.
That would help.
I don't think so. You want me to put a quarter in my eye and try and hold it on there?
Kind of do.
I don't even have one.
Oh, well, there's a
I
coin
have my
shortage, so
glasses.
that's why.
I'll
There
put
you
my
go.
blue blockers on for you just
There
to
you go.
read this part. So I have two definitions here: the quality or state of being conscious or aware of something. Okay, so very straightforward kind of
Mhm.
um, definition. And then this one is a little more detailed, and I actually really like this one because I think it goes into some of what we're going to talk about today. Mindfulness is a mental state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment while calmly acknowledging and accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations, used as a therapeutic technique.
I like that a
And
lot.
yeah, when I hear that, to me, it makes it a little more specific on how you tune into mindfulness, because I think some people get sort of like a deer in headlights, when they hear mindfulness, they suddenly start thinking like, well, meditation, and I have to be
Mhm.
some like yogi, and I have to pray and be like super spiritual about this or whatever. Um, this actually uses some wording that I really like: acknowledging and accepting one's feelings, calmly acknowledging and accepting.
Mhm.
So there's no judgment. You're just kind of observing how things go. Um, and your bodily sensations, which
Mhm.
I think is so important with especially the work we do,
Mhm.
whether it's talking about appetite or exercise,
Mhm.
understanding and really being present with what your body is feeling and what your body's telling you
Yeah.
at any given moment.
Yeah. And I think yeah, I like that definition a lot. I don't think I've ever read that definition of mindfulness, but I like it. Um,
Because you didn't go to Oxford.
right. Because I'm an idiot, is what Erin's saying, because I'm not very smart. Can you guys believe the way she treats me?
Not true. Not true.
But, I think it's important to think about mindfulness in that I think there are a couple reasons we maybe lack mindfulness. And I think some of those are external and some of those are internal. And I think the external ones are just distractions, right? Like crazy schedules, kids having soccer practice, or the way it can be bonkers, if you got kids and doing homeschooling, going into that, you know, social media, your phone. There's just a lot of like external stuff that can pull us out of the moment. But I also think sometimes we maybe subconsciously, internally, don't we avoid being mindful and we keep ourselves distracted because there is the reality that being mindful, it exposes some things often,
Yes.
right? Like beliefs we have about ourselves, or limits we've kind of put on ourselves, or false beliefs we hold, or being mindful can be, not to scare anyone off, but it can be a bit scary sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
right? When we are
Yeah.
really paying
Uncomfortable.
attention. Yeah, that's a better word, uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because paying attention to ourselves is not something we do very often. And there's a sort of, even if it's working against us, a safety in kind of keeping some things at bay and keeping
Yeah.
ourselves distracted. And from, like that definition, it says, from acknowledging, what am I really feeling? What am I really
Yeah.
experiencing here?
Yeah. And, we've talked about habits and, building routines and some of
Mm-hmm.
these ways that you can put yourself a little bit on autopilot,
Mm-hmm.
that can work for you. Right. And your brain, as we learned with Brian Fretwell, your brain likes that sort of
Mm-hmm.
habitual, I don't have to think or like be consciously aware of what's going on. I can just do and go
Mm-hmm.
through the motions. Mindfulness takes you out of that autopilot kind of thing and really puts you into being aware of what's happening right now. I think one of the cool things about that is, there's a saying that stress is a product of worrying about the past, where anxiety is a product of worrying
Mm-hmm.
about the future.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. I'm probably
Mm-hmm.
messing it up, but you get the point. It's not living in the right
Right.
now. It's
Right.
thinking about what has happened or kind of worrying and stressing about something that did happen in the past, or being anxious and worrying and stressing about something in the
Right.
future.
That's common.
What happens in the present moment or in with mindfulness practice is it really just tunes all of that future and past out of it and says, what's happening right now?
Right.
What are you experiencing right now? And it doesn't necessarily mean that mindful moments are always going to be pleasant, because
Mm,
they're not. And in fact, I've experienced some recently, in fact, some mindfulness moments for myself that were really just acknowledging, like, okay, this is really hard right now. And this is a really painful kind of, either emotionally thing for me, or sometimes with training, if it's like a painful kind of physical thing, sometimes just being present and leaning into that moment can actually help you just in a funny way, kind of help you through it.
yeah.
So,
No, I agree. And I think there's, I like what you said about, the past and the future and stuff. And I think we spend a lot of time living in the past or living in the future, and we don't spend a lot of time really present. And I I have zero evidence of this. I have no study. This is me just pulling it out. But this is just my observation, is that I think between living in the past with like regrets and that stress, living in the future with anxieties, and then just being distracted by whatever, I think it's really common for a lot of people to spend very little time throughout the day, if any, in the moment and
mhm,
being mindful. I think it's often a very, very foreign thing. We don't spend time really immersed in the moments we're in. You know, Mary and I were kind of talking about this before we started recording, just talking about, like, just with phones, like when someone, your spouse or kid or someone comes in the room and talks to you and you're on your phone, and you give them the old, yeah, yeah, oh, okay, sounds good, and you're paying just enough attention to like make them think you're paying attention, right? But
right.
your attention's somewhere else. And even in moments like that, you're not really mindful. You're not really in that moment. And so I think being mindful is just it's something we tend to do poorly, and we tend to
Mhm.
do rarely. But man, it's so important,
Yeah.
because you can't fix anything in the past, right? You can't jump into the future and do anything about that. Like, sounds cheesy, but like all you have is right now. And so living in those spaces where you can do nothing, right? Man, we're just wasting a lot of time and building up a lot of stuff internally that's can be upsetting. But all we have is like, you have this moment right now, and what are you going to do with it? And being fully
Mhm.
invested in it tends to really kind of like do away with those stresses and
Mhm.
anxieties. Yeah.
Recenter.
Hmm.
So since you brought up the phone conversation, we can go into that a little bit more. I'd like to kind of break down how mindfulness can maybe apply to these different areas of life, particularly the ones that you and I see, not just
Hmm.
professionally, but even in our personal lives, and
Right.
what we have to practice. So you mentioned the phone thing with a
Hmm.
spouse or with a family member. So I look at this as being, part of your social wellness realm, right? So
Hmm.
like maintaining relationships um, and being present with the people in the room. And this is something that I shared with you before we started recording, but just for our audience, my husband and I have had several conversations about this, because I do a lot of work on my phone, whether it's emails or texting clients or social media. Um, and I have a bad habit that I'm going to work on, where I will have my phone in what I would call common areas. So like the kitchen or, whatever. And my husband will be going through and talking to me, or he'll ask me something, and I'll just be in the phone,
Hmm.
and I'll be like, hold on, just, I just have to finish this thought, or I just need to finish this text. And to him, that's saying that whatever is happening on that phone is more important than the present moment and me in this room with you.
Right. Right.
I'm here, you know?
Hmm.
So, my one of my solutions was, okay, I need to not only acknowledge that my husband is here and present, and it's really important for me to be present with him
Hmm.
and give him that intention or that attention from me that shows that he's important. But
Right.
also, maybe I could set some boundaries around how I use my phone
Hmm.
when I'm at my desk and my workspace, this is where I'm at my computer, at my phone, and I'm working. And
Mm-hmm.
so it would be more appropriate for me to be like, just a second, hold that thought. I need to finish this. Versus if we're like making dinner together and I happen to be like nose in my phone and
Mm.
not present, which we'll talk about how this gets into the whole food relationship and eating thing in a second. Um, but yeah, that was an example that we talked about, just being mindful of
Mm-hmm.
not only how it makes him feel, but then how I am interacting with him in those moments.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny when you become more conscious of that. Like for me, being more conscious of putting my phone down when someone talks to me makes me realize how it feels more natural to continue to look at my phone. Like, oh, this feels like the weird thing I'm doing now. This is significant, versus like it's more natural to be like, yeah, yeah, okay. And I feel like I've good and bad here. I don't do as well with this with Kathleen.
Mm,
Like, after the girls are in bed or something, and I need to make a lot more concerted effort to do that better. I feel like I've done it better with my girls. If they come in the room and I'm on my phone, even if it's work or something, I try just to put it down.
mm-hmm.
Because I tell, well, not Sophie so much. I mean, she's not quite 4, but like Lila particularly, I'll tell her if she's on her iPad or something, and I'm talking to her, and she's like, yeah. I'll tell her, so
Mm-hmm.
what you're telling me right now is that whatever you're doing is more important than an actual human being right in front of you. Like, this is what you're saying. She's like, all right,
Yeah,
sorry. But then I do that with my wife, and it's
I
very
know.
contradictory and hypocritical, but it's something I absolutely need to work on with her, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people mean it this way often, but like with the phone, it feels like there's just kind of like a subtle disrespect, you know?
It is.
And I
And
never intend for it to be that way, but that's what it is.
yeah,
Like, you're talking to me and I refuse to give you 100% of my attention because of
well,
this
it
stupid thing.
I was just having some patio wine with which is a thing now. Like that's an
Patio
actual
wine.
patio wine is like a thing in my life now because I
Nice.
don't sit inside with other people other
Is
than
this
my husband.
wine you make on your
So
patio?
no, this is wine I drink on my
Oh,
patio
okay. It's like
with
a
people,
Pruno prison situation where you're
you
making patio
know.
wine.
No. So patio wine has become my social interaction during
Hmm.
during COVID, um, for the most part. And I was having patio wine with some girlfriends last night, and a couple of them I was becoming very aware, and a couple of them were having their phones kind of under the table, and they'd be looking down, or they'd just be kind of scrolling through and half listening. And sure, I notice it in myself when somebody points it out, namely Matt, my husband,
Right.
will point out, like, you're half listening to it, or you're not really listening, right? But it's so evident when you're with people that are doing that,
Yeah.
and you're the one speaking, or you're the one that's like trying to be present and trying to be engaged in this like live interaction with your friends. It suddenly becomes like so obvious that
Yeah,
these other
for
people are
sure.
not really engaged in this conversation or listening. So I think mindfulness works in two ways here. First of all, it's being, the practice of being mindful and present in this moment, with live people.
Mm-hmm. A human
But
being.
also being mindful of your own actions and your own engagement in that conversation and how it might make other people feel. So,
Right. Well, and so, another aspect of mindfulness that I think fits kind of in the umbrella is that I think, I mean, maybe there's a situation where this isn't true. I can't think of one offhand, but it certainly is the case, I think, probably in all of the ways we use mindfulness in our coaching, is that when you're mindful, whatever the circumstance, you like, there's a more rich experience
mm,
with less of the experience. Like if you have 10 minutes of a really engaged conversation with someone versus 30 of a not mindful, distracted with phones, that kind of stuff, I think you're going to get more out of that 10 minutes than you do in that 30, you know? And to jump around a bit, I guess, but to talk about food a little bit, like when, I have clients who want, like are struggling with like some kind of sweet in the evening, like sometimes I just want ice cream.
Mhm.
Something I talk with them about a lot is like, have the ice cream, but when you have it, like pay attention, like slow down, think about the texture you're feeling, think about what
Mm.
you're tasting, think about how good it is versus just like, here's my bowl of ice cream, you know, but like experience it, be mindful with it. And what so many of them say is, they'll be like, yeah, I did that. I didn't eat near as much because I was so much more satisfied on way less. Like instead of a bowl, I had 2 scoops and I was good because I
Mhm.
really fully experienced it. And so less was more satisfying because I was just invested in it. And I think that plays into, maybe there's a
Yeah.
circumstance out there it doesn't apply. I don't think so. It's just when you're really invested, you just get a lot more out of less.
I can think of the circumstance where that doesn't apply is when you're fueling for like Ironman or a
No,
marathon or a long
sure.
run. So this is something, and I mean, I've worked with athletes on, there's a time when fueling and eating becomes like part of the work. It's part of the job, and you just
Sure.
tick the boxes and you just do it.
Sure.
So that's the only thing I can think of, Michael.
Sure.
But you're
Yeah.
you're totally. I love that you brought up mindful eating because let's like pivot over to that
Let's dive into
conversation
it.
now.
Because that's
So
probably, would you say that's the area that people struggle with most that you work with?
absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
Absolutely. And we'll do a whole episode on intuitive eating, which
Mm-hmm.
it includes eating mindfully, but there's like this whole realm of um, all these principles
Yeah.
that apply in intuitive eating. So we'll talk about that in another podcast. But just for now, I would like to read some of this some of the bullet points that I found on the Center for Mindful Eating. There's some great resources on that website. It's just tcme.org. And if you Google search mindful eating or mindful eating principles or practices, you'll find all kinds of cool stuff. But I'll just read to you a few of these bullet points and then we can talk about it because it basically breaks down everything you just talked about. So, allowing yourself to become aware of the positive and nurturing opportunities that are available through food preparation and consumption by respecting your own inner wisdom. Okay, there's a lot going on there.
Right.
The two things that pop out to me is food preparation and consumption. So that preparation piece,
Mm-hmm.
that's something that, man, gets overlooked a lot, especially in today's world where we have a lot of convenience foods. We
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of like eating straight out of the bag. We have a lot of, eating out at restaurants. So that preparation piece is just not there. So
Mm-hmm.
this is part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we could talk about the health implications about, preparing and making your own food, but it's part of the food experience for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Respecting your own inner wisdom um, speaks to trusting yourself around
Mm-hmm.
food, knowing what foods you really like, what foods you don't really like,
Mm-hmm.
knowing how food interacts in your body. So, what foods make you feel better physically. Trusting that you can stop when you're satisfied, trusting that you can tell when you're hungry,
Mm-hmm.
all of these things. So, yeah, that's one aspect.
Yeah. And this might pivot a little bit, but I think it fits. So I had this thought. I was on a phone call with a client. It might have been 2 weeks ago now. And we were just talking through some of this stuff. And I had this thought, I really think that most of the issues we have around mindfulness and eating well and sticking to a program, all that kind of stuff really comes down to trust
Mm,
and trusting ourselves.
huge. Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of the issue for a lot of us is we don't truly trust ourselves to stay invested, to put our health, to make our health a top priority and keep it a top priority. We don't trust ourselves to follow through when we maybe don't want to. And so you brought up that trust piece. And I think there's a big part of that. I think a lot of what we do, maybe not directly, but absolutely indirectly, is begin to help people see that they can trust themselves, is like, give yourself some proof that you can do this. You can meal prep. You did it before, right? You can do it again, right? You can say no sometimes because you've done it before. Or you can have some, but not all, right, of the whatever, because you've done it
Yeah.
before. And I think that trust piece is so huge. And I think that's what a lot of mindfulness is, and where maybe some of that internal lack of mindfulness comes from is I don't trust myself, so I'm not going to put myself in a position where I prove to myself I can't trust myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I've done that
Vulnerability.
so much and it sucks. And I hate feeling that way. And so it's
Yes.
just easier in some ways to just not have to like develop that trust with myself or test it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point. So the second bullet point here is choosing to eat food that is both pleasing to you and nourishing to your body by using all your senses to explore, savor, and taste. This is one I find so overlooked in the populations I work with, because choosing to eat food that is both pleasing to you and nourishing to your body, people tend to focus on the nourishing part, or the healthy, quote, healthy part,
Boiled
right? This
chicken
is
and
good food.
spinach, right? Yeah.
Yes.
It's
What was
healthy
it?
for me.
Chicken, brown rice, and broccoli. Wasn't
Yeah,
that
that's
our
what it was. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's healthy for
Jeez.
me. Yeah, but
It
God.
tastes like crap. Or like I can think of better ways to make it flavorful.
Yeah.
So food should be enjoyable, people. And just going back to Michael's ice cream example, or sweets, like I want sweets in the evening or something. I tell people, eat the real deal. Like, don't try and trick yourself with some of these like hybrid ice creams that are low calorie, low fat. Like if you want like the real deal, have the real deal
Mm-hmm.
and enjoy the hell out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really make it a thing. Sit down with utensils and a bowl and no distractions, and eat it and feel it in your mouth and taste it and
Mm-hmm.
appreciate it and look at it as you're kind of like scraping it with your spoon. Like, I mean, really immerse yourself in the experience. And this reminds me of a client I had where she was very focused on like the macronutrients in her meals and building the meals out with lots of vegetables, extra
Mm-hmm.
protein, and only having, certain portion sizes of whatever. And she was very focused on what I would call kind of the diet mentality that gets into
Mm-hmm.
people. And so I brought this concept of eating mindfully, because it seemed to be just the experience of food, and actually appreciating and enjoying her meal seemed to just be completely um, absent from her
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah.
So I'm describing it the way I was just describing the ice cream, like, oh, and you'll look at your food and observe the colors and appreciate the textures. And as you're cutting up your, whatever tomatoes to put on your salad, like appreciate that texture and what's happening in them as you're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you take a bite, chew it, move it around in your mouth. Feel the textures and the flavors. What's going on there? How does it feel as it's entering your stomach? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, really getting in tune with these bodily sensations. And as I'm describing this to her, and like take pauses between bites, take some sips of, water or whatever you're drinking with your meal, and just really enjoy and like immerse yourself in the experience. She just stops. And there's like dead silence for, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds after I explain this. And she just looks at me in
Uh-huh.
that way where she's like, this lady done lost her mind. She goes, so the way you're describing this, it's like I'm going to hear angels sing as I'm eating my salad or what. Like, she was completely in disbelief and thought I was like Looney Tunes. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
so I'm not going to push this on you, but I wanted to present this to you so you
Mm-hmm.
can think about it. And even if this whole everything that I listed, as making it sound like this ethereal experience is not your, not your bag. So a few weeks later, she comes to me and she's like, she kind of has this like almost embarrassed smile on her face. And she goes, So I practiced mindful eating. And I said, really? How did it
Really?
go? Like,
Oh.
and she goes, I totally get what you were saying. And
Hmm.
I was like, really? And so she described to me, I mean, she still had that, she was kind of laughing to herself as she was doing it, but
Hmm.
she sort of humored the experience, like, okay, I'm
Hmm.
going to try this. And the one of the bigger parts, and this is the third bullet point, is acknowledging responses to food, likes, neutral, or dislikes without judgment. She was able to suspend the judgment, which I think was the key for her,
Hmm.
and really just be present. And how is this all tasting? And how do I feel? What feelings are happening in me? Am I enjoying this? Is it like so stupid because Aaron told me to do it? Like all
Right.
of these things. She really had a great experience with it. And we had a good laugh and we enjoyed, kind of the humor in the situation.
Hmm.
But she was like, this changes the way I view food now.
That's
So it was
awesome.
really cool. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. That's awesome.
I
Well,
don't think Angel sang to her, but she she tried.
yeah, that'd be kind of weird, wouldn't it? Cutting a tomato, slicing a tomato, and light
I
shining
know.
down from heaven. You're like, am I not supposed to be doing this? Like,
Yeah, I
what's
know.
happening right
What
now?
what's happening?
It's a holy tomato. Yeah. I think, so another story, this is like one that I'm in the middle of because it's actually a conversation I had with the client this morning. Um, so she came to me and had been kind of actively involved in like pretty good restriction, like
Mm,
no sugar, not eating anything that was like super
yeah,
pleasing, that kind of stuff. And whenever someone comes to me and they've been kind of restricted, my approach isn't to go, okay, stop all of that and let's do something completely different. It's My thought is like, okay, how do we kind of slowly work our way out of this? Because I think the reality is for a lot of people, like the assumption is this has got to be restrictive, it's got to kind of suck, it's going to be hard, like that's just the way it is.
yeah.
And
Punishment.
to jump from that to like, hey, you can eat the things, it's just like, whoa, like I know I'm not ready for that. So I think a lot of times there's a lot of like, let's take some steps back, and let's
Sure.
just see how we can maybe begin to incorporate some of these things, um, without just totally blowing their minds. So I asked her, I said, so like, what's the thing you've missed the most, like doing this restrictive thing? She goes, I really just want some pizza. Yeah, she said, I
Mm,
make like a cauliflower crust one, and it's fine, but it's not the same. I just want the whatever. And I said, so what if this week, if you plan on having pizza, okay, and if we approach that situation, you decide what's an appropriate amount for you. Maybe that's 2 slices, right? And you tell yourself, I'm going to eat this without judgment. I'm going to have made a decision ahead of time about how much I'm going to eat so that I feel comfortable with it. I said, let's make sure you have like a big salad along with it, right? So you're getting some good veggies, but
mhm.
you're also fully engaging in this moment of eating this pizza. Like, I really want you to experience it, taste it, feel it, the textures, the way the cheese is so gooey and good, just how all these elements work together so well, and really enjoy it. But also have put some, because I think this is a piece of mindfulness too, is put some thought into it ahead of time of
Sure.
how am I going to make sure that I can walk away from this situation still feeling really good about it, you know? And she was just like, all right, I can do that. And I'm excited to have some pizza,
Cool.
like,
Yeah.
but I think it's kind of like, let's open up the freedom a little bit, maybe still keep some restraints, because if it's like, yeah, go have some pizza, that's an opportunity, I think, for a lot of people to go like, okay, I'm going to have pizza. And I ate it all.
Right.
And I just all or nothing kind of thinking I had the pizza. So I'm going to have all the pizza. And now I'm a piece of crap because I did the thing. I'm not, all that stuff that just
Right.
cycles.
Right.
So I think sometimes it can be good to have like some constraints or whatever on there,
Hmm.
decide ahead of time. So you can go into that situation, you can enjoy it, but you can also still feel like you're
Yeah.
really successful.
Some structure. Yeah,
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
structure to
That's a
it.
good word.
And I like that you pointed out that mindfulness can also be part of the planning
Hmm.
of the eating and the experience as well.
Hmm.
So, and you're exactly right, when people come from that, restrictive mindset or diet mentality, um if you suddenly just burst open this world of food on them and just say,
Yeah.
go hog wild, all of a sudden this disinhibition and that, again, that pattern that they've
Hmm.
always experienced before. So offering some structure and some ideas and really working with
Right.
people to find their own comfort level and their own
Hmm.
boundaries with that.
Hmm.
So, and this final bullet point speaks to that: learning to be
Yeah.
aware of physical hunger and satiety, to guide your decision to begin eating and to stop eating. So I always remind people, I work with a lot of people that have kids, and I'm like, can you overfeed or underfeed a baby? Like, have you ever know? It's really hard to do
Yeah.
because they let you know, like, babies, we're all born with this
Right.
ability
Right.
to determine when we're hungry, how much we should eat, and to self regulate.
Hmm.
It's when we become older, um, through childhood and then into the adult years, where we have these external cues that are telling us
Right.
when to eat, how much to eat. Oh, that smells good. Oh, that person's eating. Oh, I'm not really hungry, but I'm feeling emotional needs, all this other stuff. So those are the things that muddle those
Hmm.
physical hunger and satiety cues. But I remind people you can always get back to those cues and really listen to them. They're still there. It might take some practice for
Right.
you to acknowledge them and to interpret them properly, especially if you've come from a disordered eating background or if you have experienced severe restriction with weight loss attempts and different things.
Hmm.
Um, but this is where mindfulness can really help with that, is checking in with your body. And I'll use scales with people, like a 1 to 10 scale, just a
Hmm.
simple, like, again, this isn't a judgmental, should I be hungry? Should I be full by now? I shouldn't eat more.
Right.
None of the should and all that judgment stuff. Let's just really acknowledge and listen to what your body is telling you and those
Right.
cues.
Right. Because like you said, I think those cues are always happening. It's
Mm,
just about our ability to hear them and interpret them and understand them. And that takes practice. It's not like, uh, you know, when someone says, well, I never feel hungry, you know, um, I think most often it's, well, no, you don't know what a hunger cue is and
mm,
how to tune into it, or how to listen to it or listen for it. It's not that you don't feel hungry. I think you're most of the time people's bodies are communicating to them. We just don't know what
yeah.
does hunger feel like. Or I've avoided it so long and just gone by whatever other cues, time or stress or whatever, to guide my eating, that I
Hmm.
just I just even don't know what to look for. And so I think that can take some time to reconnect with and to be able to interpret again. But I think they're there. I don't think
Yeah.
that's that they go away. It's just that it's buried. It's so under so much other
Right.
stuff we can't hear it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what do you do with just switching again to mindfulness and exercise?
Hmm.
Um, what's your approach there, since you primarily work with a lot of people with exercise programs and, physical movement,
Hmm.
engagement, I guess, and that kind of thing? What's your approach to mindfulness with physical activity?
So in the moment, I think there's I I talk a lot about what I want people to be feeling with a certain exercise.
Hmm.
You know, it's a little bit different like online, doing distance coaching, but like in person, I tell clients, like when I first meet them, like, listen, I'm a pretty hands-on guy. Are you comfortable with that? Because
Hmm.
I like to poke and prod a little bit. Like if I want you feeling something between your shoulder blades, like I want to put my fingers there and like connect here, like mentally feel this moving, you
Yeah.
know, um, so that people, because it's easy for people to go through strength training movements, exercises, and just think sort of like, uh, just think of the movement as this comprehensive thing, right? Like, oh, I'm rowing, so I'm just bringing my arm to my side. This is what I'm doing, versus like what muscles are contracting, where are you feeling that squeeze, and when people can begin to feel that kind of thing and kind of increase that mind muscle connection and can feel contractions, I think that in and of itself just really puts people in the moment, because now I'm paying attention to every single repetition.
Sure.
Every rep I'm looking for, there's that squeeze, there's that squeeze, over and over and
Yeah.
over.
And you probably, sorry to
Sure.
cut you off, but you probably see a difference in their form too,
Oh,
right? When they
absolutely.
start really thinking about
Mm-hmm.
which muscles I'm trying to engage, or this is like my spatial awareness of
Mm-hmm.
what limb I'm
Mm-hmm.
exercising.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then their endurance for an exercise and their strength for an exercise, because when you really cue into what specifically is being worked here, what's performing the work, what's moving the load, a lot of times you can do more, versus just sort of this, my body's doing this thing, and it's, yeah, you can tend to get a lot more out of it, just like other things with mindfulness, right? When you're really mindful, you get a lot more out of it. So I think that in and of itself is probably one of the biggest things I do for exercise is just be paying attention to this, think about this, feel this, experience this.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can relate to that a lot just with my training for triathlon,
Mm-hmm.
uh, those mental cues that I would give myself for running form, or doing big gear work on the bike, where
Mm-hmm.
you have low cadence, but it really requires a lot of strength in your
Mm-hmm.
glutes, your hamstrings, your quads, everything. And also your upper body to
Mm-hmm.
brace that, to kind of counter that like tension
Mm-hmm.
you're putting on the pedals. Um, I would use, and then swimming, oh my gosh, like that's so technique driven that
Yeah.
I'd really have to be mindful swimming.
For sure.
Yeah. So I think with movement, y- you know, it definitely can help with form and the overall quality of the workout. I also think it can help, like I kind of alluded to before. It can, in an odd way, help you through some of the pain or the
Mm-hmm.
discomfort that you're feeling in that moment if you are
Mm-hmm.
doing like a hard workout, or
Mm-hmm.
you're on that final few reps or something and
Mm-hmm.
it's really challenging. Really tuning back into, what is my body feeling in this moment? What are my thoughts in this exact moment? Not worrying about that third rep that you have to get in, or that final interval
Right.
that you have to get in, but like, I'm here right now. What can I do to give my very
Mm-hmm.
best right now in this moment?
Yeah.
That's a really powerful way to think about physical
Absolutely.
activity too.
Absolutely. It's, I can't tell you how many times I've had clients come into a session and just feel like, I'm not up for this today.
I
I'm
don't
not up for
know.
this entire hour.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's not worry about the entire hour. Let's focus on this one set
Yeah.
and let's see how it goes.
Start somewhere.
Because then that's that living in the future, the anxiety of like, I'm not up for all this today. And maybe someone's not, and that's fine. If you're not, you're not. But a lot of times, just that being mindfulness, we're able to do a lot more because, okay, I'm just going to focus on this. I can get this rep done. I can do one more set. I can do that. And then after that, okay, I can do one more. I can't tell
Yeah.
you how many times, like I've had people just like with such resignation in their voice be like, all right, I can do another set, or yeah, I can go up and wait. Like, yeah, I'm capable of more than I was giving myself credit for, because
Right.
once you're just in the moment and doing that and take these little bite-sized pieces, it's like, yeah, okay, I can do more. I'm capable
Yeah.
of more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're taking it all into consideration, no way, I can't do any of this. It's too overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a metaphor for life, right? For
For
any
a
of that
lot of
stuff.
things. For a lot of
So I
things.
think one of the cool things about really hard physical activity and training is, I do think that there can be kind of a meditative effect. So when people
Mm-hmm.
hear mindfulness in exercise, I think they tend to think yoga or tai chi, or something that's like super relaxing and kind of turning into this quiet meditation, which I
Yeah.
do think there's a lot of value in those practices. I have also learned that if I'm present in the moment, even with the really hard stuff, that can serve in the same capacity as being present and mindful, even if it's like physically just this grueling activity that I'm in the middle of.
Mm-hmm.
That can have the same positive effects.
Oh, yeah. I think mindfulness, yeah, I think it's often kind of like looked at as, like you said, it's like
Yeah.
this Zen state of peaceful. I think there's another side to mindfulness, kind of like you're talking about, that develops grit,
Yeah.
and the ability to grind, of just
Hmm.
like, okay, one foot in front of the other, literally. Like
Hmm.
this task is hard, but if I take this one step, literally one step at a time, I can do this. And I think that grit and ability to grind and to persevere through something that's hard is a really important thing to develop. To know that, like, okay, this sucks, but I can do this. I'll
Yeah.
survive it. I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
Versus just like, oh, I can't do this anymore. Whatever. I think there's a more dirty, gritty side to mindfulness that we often don't think about, like you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And something that was in my workout, I'm doing this training plan for Rebecca's Private Idaho, the remote virtual version. And there was a note in the training plan today after a workout that said, take 5 minutes after this workout and just appreciate what you have done. Like, just take a moment and feel how your body feels, and think about what you've just done and kind of reflect on where you are right now and how that feels.
Yeah.
And it was really cool because I have done this throughout my career, and in a lot of ways, just really appreciating, oh my gosh, my body just did that for me, or it feels really good to be done with those things, and here I am now in this moment. But it was a nice reminder to just appreciate where you've come that has brought you to right now.
Right. Yeah. Well, and again, I've had so many clients that just, once you're done, it feels so good. I mean, one, there's that accomplishment of I did it, but two, I just think, like, when you pay attention to your body for a minute after a workout, you're just like, I think our bodies want to work.
Yeah. Don't you feel so alive? I'm just like,
yeah, and
I'm
you just feel like,
alive.
yeah, there's just this feeling of, yeah, alive and accomplishment, but just also, like, I think our bodies just, they want to perform hard tasks. And we avoid that so much. Like, I think, I think we've even talked about that. Maybe this could be a whole separate podcast topic, and maybe it will, but just like, we seek convenience so often, and the easy way out, and how can I make this easy, that we just don't engage in a lot of struggle, physically. And I think our bodies are unhappy doing that. I think our bodies want to work. And when they do, it just, there's chemically, there's a lot of things that happen, but there's also just this, like, yeah, I'm doing what my body is made to do. We have all these bones and ligaments and stuff that do things for a reason. It's not to sit on the couch and, watch Netflix. It's to perform hard tasks, and I think our bodies like doing that. It just feels good.
Agree. Yeah. Yeah. Mindfulness in the little everyday life things. We talk about this a little bit in our meaning in the mundane segment, but some things for me would be playing with my cat, or just like having morning time. Like, he's the first thing I see. Matt's still asleep usually when I wake up. So I have time with my cat in the morning. I am out in my garden sometimes, and so just being, like, present and appreciating what's happening there, and watching the little critters in the garden. It's much easier for me to be mindful when I'm outside and to be present, I think, because I just fully immerse myself in the sounds and the smells and the feeling of the breeze and whatever. Yeah. So I think there are a lot of things you can do.
Yeah.
Or if I'm, like, say I'm running errands or something, sometimes I'll have a tendency to, like, have my phone out when I'm in line waiting for something. Or if I'm walking to somewhere and I'm at a stoplight, and I'll kind of pull out my phone. So I've made this conscious effort to just, like, be present right now. Like, leave the phone in wherever and just look at what's happening around you, and observe your surroundings, and observe what you're, where you're at right now. It's kind of cool to take those ordinary, moments and daily things and just really immerse yourself and make it a thing that you're focusing on.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it gives us a chance to think, and I think we don't spend enough time just kind of sitting with our thoughts, because we are so, if we're not watching something or talking to someone, we're engaged here. And maybe we're responding to things we see, it's like, oh, this makes me angry, or this makes me happy, or whatever. But, like, we're not just sitting with ourselves and giving ourselves a chance to just experience being us, and be bored even. Like we've
Yes.
got to be like so engaged all the time. And if we're bored for a second, it's like, oh, entertain me, you know. But I've noticed that when I allow myself to be bored, like if I, go to the bathroom and I don't take my phone, or if I'm, sitting doing something, like I don't have to have something on or whatever. Like when I give myself a chance to be bored and just think, like I come up with some cool ideas, you
Yeah.
know, and or I think about, like how I want to be a better dad or a better, husband, or things for work, or, this kind of stuff. And I feel like I get to know myself a little bit better. And I think that's where a lot of like dissatisfaction or lack of contentment comes with from for people is
Yeah.
we're just living in the past or living in the future. And I know for me, in those times, in fact, I shared it last week or 2 weeks ago about, just I was just pissed and mad about my ceiling leaking and what was going to cost and da da da. And there was that day where Kathleen said to me, like, be done with work.
Yeah.
You're
Put it
done
away.
now. Put it away and go do something with the girls.
Yeah.
And that's one instance, but that's happened a lot when I step out of that stress or that anxiety and I fully engage in something in the moment. It doesn't solve those things, but holy crap, do I feel better. And
Yeah.
I think when we spend more time just being in the moment, there's something that really takes away that discontentment and that unhappiness. Not all of it by any means, but there really is something centering
Hmm.
about just paying attention to what's going on right now in front of you. And it really does kind of do away with a lot of those anxieties and stressors and that kind of stuff. And I think
Right.
we spend so little time actually engaged in the moment that we're just living with stress and anxiety all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, when I think back to the topics we've covered today, I think like, socially being mindful is more engaging with the people around you and the
Mm-hmm.
present conversation and showing those people that they matter. Being
Mm-hmm.
mindful with eating is recognizing and nourishing your body in ways not just with the nutrient composition of the food, but the
Right.
flavor and the enjoyment and savoring it, and even being present with your family at that
Mm-hmm.
meal and sharing a meal together, being present with physical activity or exercise. There's a lot of talk with, especially in elite sport, with engaging in the process instead of the
Mm-hmm.
outcome. And we've talked about that
Mm-hmm.
before. But as you pointed out, like helping people really break down some of the hard tasks into
Mm-hmm.
meaningful, intentional, like I can do one more rep or I can do one more set kind of thing. And helping with like form and all of these other things to be present there. And then
Mm-hmm.
with those little daily things, I find that time just slows down,
Mm-hmm.
and just giving my brain a break from all of the like rat race, ideas and things that are in my
Mm-hmm.
head. um it doesn't necessarily mean that all goes away and suddenly you
Right.
stop thinking about those things. It's almost like you just don't dwell on them as much. Like you're not just, there's no judgment
Mm-hmm.
attached to it. And I think that's one of the biggest things about being mindful
Yeah.
in any space, is that what you're thinking or feeling comes and goes, and you acknowledge it, but you don't necessarily dwell on it or judge it or react
Right.
to it in a certain way. So
Right.
yeah, lots of benefits.
Yeah. Well, and it
Have
also
you
just, oh, so I was gonna say,
Go
it just
ahead.
it gives you a break from it. I mean,
Mm,
there are a lot of things that you're probably going to feel stress and anxiety about throughout the week, and
yeah.
maybe in very valid ways. But if you just sit with those 100% of the time, like it just cycles and everything gets worse. But
Hmm.
if you're with those things, but you step out of that and you engage in a moment, it's like you get a break from that. So you aren't feeling that all the time. And if you have another moment in the day, and if you have these moments throughout the day, it's like you aren't just sitting with this stuff and it's not just getting heavier. It's you get to step out of it and be like, okay, I feel good. I feel like I've shed
Yeah.
that for a little bit, and maybe I'm going to put it back on later on, but like I've had a
Hmm.
break and I've got to like feel that weight come off me a little bit and focus on some other things. And then I found a lot of times when I step into those mindful moments, I come back to those stressors or anxieties with a clearer head and sometimes some solutions on how to handle it. Because
Yes,
I've just gotten so
absolutely.
bogged down. It's all I see is the issue and there's no solutions.
Hmm.
Where I take a break, step away, I come back. It's like, oh, if I did this, that might help,
Yeah.
or maybe I could try this. Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of opens your brain up to some different modes of thinking and different
Yeah.
possibilities
Or even
that
some
you wouldn't have
possibilities
seen. Yeah, yeah,
versus
exactly.
none at all.
Instead of just being mad at what's
Right.
happening.
Yeah. Everything's
Have you ever
terrible. Yeah.
have you ever tried those apps like Calm or Headspace?
I haven't, but I have some clients that have,
Mm-hmm.
particularly Calm. I don't think any of them have tried Headspace that I know of,
Yeah.
but I've had 4 or 5 probably that have tried Calm and really like it a lot,
Yeah.
a
I've
lot.
tried a couple. Yeah, I've tried a couple different features in both of those apps because it's something that I will suggest to clients, but then I'm like, how can I suggest this if I've never really tried it? So I'll go in there and play around with some of those. Some of them are guided meditations. I've had like stories, like a calming voice just kind of reads you a story that sort of takes you into a different, realm.
Mhm.
Um, to me, honestly, it doesn't really matter how you make space for that
Right,
mindful moment. It's
right,
making the space for it and
right.
being truly present. So, those apps are a great way to help
Mhm,
you do it. You can
mhm.
also, I mean, we've talked about several other things, whether it's engaging with a pet, engaging with a friend, getting outside in nature. Um,
Yeah.
just laying with your eyes closed and focusing on your breath and taking like
Mhm,
multiple deep breaths and really focusing
mhm,
on that.
mhm.
Um, but I also think journaling could be something that
Yep,
really brings you into a mindful,
yep,
state. So,
yep. I think
yeah.
too, one I've used before with clients and myself is just acknowledging where you are. Like,
Yeah.
what am I hearing? What am I seeing? What am I smelling? What am I feeling? Just like really kind of like you were talking about with food earlier, just like what are all the things I'm experiencing right now? Because that takes you out of the past or the future and brings you to right now.
Yeah.
And there's really something powerful in that, just fully experiencing the moment you're in.
Hmm.
It seems like, I mean, I get why people would think it's silly. I get why people would think that it's not going to do anything. I 100% get it, but I also know 100% it's really, really helpful. And you're wrong if you feel that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Michael's right. You're wrong.
You're wrong, and I'm right.
So I would love to hear from our listeners and viewers if you give this a try, and especially if it's something new that you
Hmm.
have not really bought into before, or if you're trying a new method of it, like if you try an app or if you try, something in your next workout session or whatever. Let us know because I'm always looking for ways to share this with my clients too. I mean, I have my ways of engaging in a mindfulness practice, but there are so many ways that people find are effective. So,
Hmm.
so let us know.
Yeah, love to hear that. Yeah,
Yeah. Anything else
I don't think
on
so.
that?
You put a pretty good recap there just a minute ago. That was
I'm good at that.
a good recapper. Not a
I'm good at the
kneecapper,
organizational.
recapper. He's not a Tanya Harding.
I think those were the shins. Maybe she hit
Was it
their
the shin? I
kneecaps.
thought it
I
was
don't
a
know.
knee.
Did you ever watch that the movie, what is it, I Tanya or something like that? Is
I didn't,
that what
but
it's
I
called?
I do remember as a kid when that happened,
Yeah.
and my dad got Sports Illustrated, and I remember the cover of the Sports Illustrated for that week or month, whatever, however it came out, was Nancy Kerrigan, like just like with her face
Oh,
like in agony and pain, and the title, a heading or whatever on the cover of the magazine was "Why me?" I was like,
yes. Oh
man,
man.
this is a rough situation.
Jeez. We've derailed so far from our topic, but
That's all
okay.
right. That's all right.
I do remember the whole Nancy Kerrigan, Tanya Harding thing, and watching the movie I Tanya. I think that's what it's called. With Margot Robbie is, I mean, it's like a train wreck because you're really
Yeah,
watching. It's a dramatization of
sure.
Tanya Harding's life, so you can't take everything for how it's presented, but it really does make you just go, "Whoa." I mean, this
Yeah.
gal had some rough spots.
Seemed like it.
Um,
Yeah.
so meaning in the mundane, you got one?
Um,
Do you want me to go
no,
first
no,
so
no.
you
I
can
did have
think of
one.
yours?
No, I did have one. I just lost it. I promise I had one, and I just lost it. Oh, I know what it was. Yes. Okay. I
Okay.
promise I had one. See, I can be responsible sometimes. So this was actually just yesterday. How'd it come about? I made a post about because I'm a type 1 diabetic. So yesterday about just diabetes and exercise
Yeah,
and
I saw that post. Good
kind
one.
of some stuff from some studies on it's just really critical. Like if you're diabetic, you need to be moving. Like there's a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of reasons why. Um, I won't get into those, but you need to be moving. And so I just put a post up, and then typically like when you get a comment from someone, it's awesome, something usually along the lines of oh, I completely agree, or this is great, or thanks for sharing this, which is wonderful. But yesterday I got a comment from a lady that I don't know, I guess um, but she just said something to the effect of like, I just listened to episode 1 of Middleish, and like she said, I literally gasped or my jaw dropped or whatever when Aaron said you're a type 1 diabetic. And she was just like, and I'm learning to like manage this through exercise and like just like this exciting thing
Wow.
about like, hey, you too, you know?
Yeah.
And it was just it seemed like from her perspective it was this cool thing about like whenever you find someone who has something in common, especially with, I've noticed like in the diabetic community, like if there's someone else who's a type 1 diabetic, it's like, oh cool, hey, we share this kind of
Yeah.
weird chronic disease in common, and that's kind of cool to find someone else does that. But for me it was just cool because I got the little notification of like, oh, comment on Instagram, and I go into that thinking like, oh, it's going to be like, great post, cool, thanks for sharing, whatever. But it's this really meaningful moment for someone that turned into a
Mm-hmm.
meaningful moment for me, because it's like, yay for me, there's another one out there, that we've
Yeah.
connected now. And it was a really cool surprise to hop on social media, after seeing that notification, have it being something that was just like really, really meaningful, and it felt good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say we need more moments like that involving
Mm-hmm.
social media these days where it's a positive experience when you get on there.
Right.
That's cool though. That's a cool connection to make and just shows that the value in sharing
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff that
Yeah.
you could share 10 or 20 posts like that and suddenly one will just land
Mm-hmm.
and in the right spot for someone
Mm-hmm.
else. And that's a cool feeling.
Yep, it really is.
Good.
Yeah, cool.
So Matt and I have a hummingbird feeder outside our window where we eat dinner.
Nice.
And lately, I don't know if this has been like, getting into gardening or whatever, but I have become fascinated with the little critters and just the wild creatures around me and the bugs and the just learning. Like I'll just have
Mm-hmm.
questions like, I wonder why this happens or whatever. And I saw this hummingbird that was eating out of the feeder and I'm like, how do they drain the feeder so fast? I mean, their beaks are so tiny, their bodies are so tiny. And yes, we have frequent visitors to our feeder, but man, how much can they drink at a time? And how
Mm-hmm.
do they have a tongue that comes out of the beak or do they suck it up in the beak? Like I had all these questions. So Matt pulls out his phone,
Yeah, of course.
which is the one time that we will allow phones at the dinner table is if it's part of our dinner conversation. And it's almost
Research.
like it's pulling out the, Encyclopedia Britannica, like
That
in
was my
modern
family
form.
growing up. That was my
Yeah.
family. Like we had the dictionary encyclopedia out at like most meals
Yeah.
because we're just like, oh, I
Yeah.
wonder why that is the way it is. Yeah,
It's
I totally
cool.
get that.
So he found this super cool video of this hummingbird and how it eats nectar out of a flower. And this scientist basically, where did he live? Somewhere in South America
Mm-hmm.
and studies hummingbirds. And he basically made a fake flower with some nectar in it. And then he cut a hole in the side and then put this camera to watch. So when the hummingbird comes up to the fake flower, you can see what's happening on the inside. And hummingbirds have this multi-pronged tongue, has 4 prongs on it. And when the tongue goes into the nectar, it has these like tendrils hanging off of it that grab the fluid and the sugar and zips it back into the mouth. And their tongues can move at the same speed as their wings.
Holy crap.
So that's how they drain that so quickly. And it's like multiple, I mean, I don't know, they can like drain 10 mils or something within seconds. I mean, it's wild. And so we're watching this video and my face is just like, I'm just like looking at Matt, like, this is so cool. And I just felt like a kid again, like learning about, I remember doing little, reports and whatever on wildlife when you're growing up, but having these questions as an adult and then just being so fascinated with like watching this video, I was totally like, this is, I mean, it's something so like every day, like, oh, I wonder what the hummingbird is doing. But I'm watching this going, that is so rad. And it just gave me this whole new appreciation of not only learning about wildlife, but also just like those revelations in that moment. So it was super cool.
That's awesome. Hummingbirds are rad. They're like the coolest little birds. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're very cool birds. It always feels really special when you see one. It's like, I mean, I'll like get the girls to like go, come here, it's a hummingbird.
I know.
I don't know why, but it just is.
Our hummingbird feeder is hung sort of behind us if we're sitting on our front patio, and they will literally just like hover over our heads, and it sounds like a drone. It's like like right over your head.
You can't even see their wings almost.
It's wild.
Like a blur. Yeah. They're very cool. Did you know that they
so cool.
They represent like love and happiness and good luck?
I didn't, but now that I know that,
right? Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. They're good little birds. Cool.
So thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the conversation, partner.
Yeah, that was good. I would like to tack on to your, if you try some mindfulness techniques, let us know. Also, we would love to hear like your meaning in the mundanes. If you guys have some, like, man, maybe next time or in a couple weeks, we can even share some of them. I would love to hear, or we would love to hear from you guys about some of those. I know some of you have shared like I have a couple clients that have shared with me, particularly I think some have with Aaron too, but like, send those to our Middleish email so we can both kind of read those. And we would love to see how you're pulling out some meaning and having some mindfulness and just these seemingly kind of mundane, ordinary, everyday moments.
Yeah. So that's middleish@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And you all have a good week. We'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.